The windstorms of the Red Moon roared across the broken plains as the war between the Human Alliance and the Kerith Empire reached its final hour. In the ruins of an ancient fortress stood the last person the Alliance had expected to find. She was the Queen of the Kerith, tall and fierce with silver markings that glowed faintly across her skin. Her name was Lethra. She had been forced to flee her capital after a rebellion within her own ranks. Now she stood alone, wounded, cornered, and with no hope left out above the ruins, hovered a damaged human shuttle. Inside it stood a soldier with a weathered face and calm eyes. His name was Ronan. He was known across the front lines not for cruelty or victory counts, but for a strange trait many soldiers had forgotten during this long war. He still believed that saving a life had value, even the life of an enemy. When his commander ordered him to return to base, Ronan refused. The distress signal detected from the ruins had been faint, almost broken, but he heard it clearly. Someone was asking for help. The rules did not matter to him now. He guided his failing shuttle toward the signal and prepared for a landing that the ship was not built to survive. The ground shook as metal scraped against stone. Ronan staggered out into dust and smoke. He scanned the ruins and saw her standing between collapsed pillars. Lethra stared at him with fierce eyes filled with suspicion. She expected a soldier ready to finish the war by taking her life. Instead, she saw a man who lowered his weapon and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. Lethra stepped back as he approached. Her instincts as a queen told her to stay proud and sharp, yet the pain from her injuries weakened her stance. She had been chased by traitors for days. Her energy shields had failed. Her guards had fallen one by one. When she looked at this human warrior, her eyes held rage mixed with despair. Ronan saw something more. He saw someone abandoned by her own people. He saw someone who needed help. He spoke in a steady voice. He told her he came alone. He said he would not harm her. Lethra tried to remain firm, but her voice shook when she replied. She asked why he was here. She asked what he wanted. Ronan answered in the simplest words he could find. He said he came because he heard someone calling for help. He said he came because he chose to believe that an enemy in pain was still a life worth saving. The queen stared at him like he had spoken an impossible thing. Her people believed humans were ruthless invaders. Humans believed the same about the Kerith. Yet here he stood without threat. She felt confusion ripple through her mind, more strongly than the pain in her body. Ronan saw her weakness and moved closer to examine her injuries. She resisted for a moment until her legs trembled. He caught her before she fell. The moment startled both of them. She had never been touched by a human before. He had never expected a queen of an enemy empire to feel so fragile beneath his hands. He carried her into the shuttle and sealed the cabin. The engines groaned, but held steady. He placed her on a support chair and activated the basic medical systems. The light wrapped around her wounds. Lethra watched him with guarded eyes. She asked again what he hoped to gain. Ronan replied that he hoped to prevent another death in a war that had already taken too many. The shuttle shook as it lifted from the ruins. Ronan's plan was risky. If his people discovered he rescued the alien queen, they would accuse him of treason. If her people found them, they would kill him without hesitation. Yet he had made his choice. As the shuttle crossed the storm line, Lethra spoke in a tired voice. She told him about the rebellion. She explained how a faction sought to overthrow her for refusing to use forbidden weapons that would destroy entire human colonies. Ronan listened without judgment. He sensed the weight on her shoulders. She had chosen restraint and paid for it with betrayal. Ronan told her something that made her fall silent. He said that compassion from a leader was not a weakness. He said it was the one quality that kept entire worlds from turning to ashes. No one in her court had spoken such words to her since the war began. For the first time in many cycles, she felt a breath of calm. Suddenly, a warning alarm echoed through the shuttle. Ronan checked the display. A squadron of human fighters had detected them. If they reached the shuttle, they would destroy it. Ronan changed course. The shuttle dived into a canyon filled with mist. The narrow rock walls trembled as they scraped past. Lethra watched him with a mix of fear and awe. She had seen many soldiers pilot ships, but few handled danger with such steady control. The fighters launched tracking beams that followed the shuttle's heat trail. Ronan cut the engines and sent the shuttle sliding through the canyon using only gravity and thin bursts of directional thrusters. Lethra gripped the seat as the craft tilted and spun. Ronan called out instructions to the shuttle systems with quick precision. After several tense minutes, the fighters lost the trail. The canyon swallowed their signals. The danger faded. When the shuttle settled on a flat ridge, Ronan checked Lethra's wounds again. Her strength was returning, but she could not stand long without support. She looked at him with a calmer expression now. She asked why he risked his life to protect someone his people called an enemy leader. Ronan thought for a moment and replied with honesty. He said he believed that wars ended not when generals signed papers, when individuals chose to break the cycle of hatred. His words struck her deeply. She wondered what her empire might have become if more warriors thought the way he did. She closed her eyes and let her tense breath slow. The ridge shook as a storm approached. Ronan guided her out of the shuttle to a sheltered cave. The wind roared outside while the cave remained still and dim. They sat across from each other. The silence between them no longer felt hostile. It felt curious. Lethra asked him about his home. Ronan spoke of a small valley with green forests and warm rivers. He spoke of his sister and the quiet meals they shared before he joined the war. He spoke of how he wished for a future where stories like theirs did not begin with rescue missions, but with peaceful meetings. She listened with growing interest. She had grown up within crystal halls and military academies. She had never known a quiet valley. She had never walked through forests without guards. His life sounded simple but peaceful. She found herself imagining it. In return, Lethra spoke of her childhood. She spoke of her mother, who taught her to lead with strength and fairness. She spoke of the empire before the war. She spoke of her dreams for unity that had never reached reality. Ronan listened closely. He sensed her loneliness. He sensed her fear of failure. He did not speak empty comforts. He only listened in a way that made her feel seen. Hours passed while they waited for the storm to fade. A loud rumble broke their calm. Ronan stepped outside and saw a dropship emerging from the clouds. It bore the marks of the Kareth rebels. They had tracked the queen. If they captured her, she would face execution. Ronan returned quickly. He told her to stay hidden. Lethra refused. She said she would not let him fight alone. Ronan argued that she could barely stand. Lethra raised her chin and insisted that pride was useless if it condemned an ally to death. Ronan recognized the resolve in her eyes. He accepted her choice. They moved to the entrance of the cave. The rebels landed and spread out. Their leader, a tall warrior with dark armor, shouted that the queen must surrender. Lethra stepped forward despite her weakness. She declared that she would never kneel to traitors. Ronan stood beside her with his weapon ready. The rebels opened fire. Ronan pulled her behind a stone pillar and returned shots with precise bursts. Lethra activated a small energy lance that flickered due to her injuries. Together, they fought against overwhelming odds. A rebel rushed toward Ronan with a blade. The soldier shoved Ronan back and swung. Ronan dodged and countered with a strike that disarmed the attacker. Another rebel fired at Lethra. She deflected the shot, but the force knocked her to the ground. Ronan sprinted to her side and shielded her from incoming fire. She looked up at him as dust swirled around them. She saw no fear in his eyes. She saw determination to keep her alive, no matter the cost. The rebels prepared for a final charge. Ronan knew they could not hold out long. He activated a flare beacon from his belt. It sent a coded signal into the sky. A moment later, a human patrol ship responded. The rebels were caught between two forces. They tried to retreat, but the patrol ship disabled their engines. The last attackers fled into the storm. When the battle ended, the patrol ship landed. Human soldiers rushed forward, but froze when they saw Ronan standing beside the alien queen. Their commander demanded an explanation. Ronan stepped forward and spoke clearly. He explained that the queen was not an enemy seeking destruction. He explained she had been targeted by her own rebels for refusing to unleash Forbidden's weapons. He said saving her might save far more lives than killing her ever could. The commander hesitated. War had hardened many hearts. Yet the sight of Ronan standing between the queen and the soldiers with unwavering resolve made him pause. Lethra bowed her head slightly to show she meant no harm. The commander lowered his weapon. A patrol ship escorted them to a neutral outpost. There the diplomats began discussions. Lethra proposed an end to the conflict. She offered technology and resources in exchange for protection from the rebels. Ronan stood near her as support. For the first time since the war began, leaders from both sides listened instead of fought. Ovi,